Hello everyone, welcome to the Strimzi Community Call on 26th of June. And first thing on the agenda is StrimziCon. I think that Paolo or Kate are not here, so yeah, I and the whole Strimzi team would like to thank all the speakers and the attendees. It was great. As a second point, I added there the link to the playlist. All the recordings and all the sessions are in the Streams YouTube channel. So if anyone interested or if there is anyone who didn't make it to the StreamZcon, please check it out. And yes, I guess that's all from our side. And the next point is the PRs and issues. I see one of the issue added. I think it was from Kate, and that's for the Kafka access operator. And this one is about adding the, if I understood it correctly, the PKCS12 keystore and keystore password to the secret created by the Kafka access operator, because some of the KMOK connectors are not using the PEM files, if I understood it correctly. And yeah, there were some discussion between the community user and Jakub and Kate as well, if we should add such support or not. And I think that the conclusion for now is that it would be maintenance burden, I guess, and it would require something like OpenSSL, which for other users may be a security risk. So yeah, I don't know how we can proceed with this or what future, I don't know, discussion it will need.
Maybe it
Does
should wait
anyone?
for
Yeah.
maybe it should wait for Kate as well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep it for the next time. And is there any other PR or issue someone would like to raise, discuss, or something? Seems like not. So there is one proposal to discuss, and it's about adding the KEEP 714 support to metrics reporter from Michael Mason. So yeah, Mikael, do you want to discuss it or something?
No, nothing in particular. I mean, sorry, I mean, you can probably hear I'm terribly sick, so I can't really speak. But I'm happy to just discuss via the PR. I mean, apart if maintainers have any specific question they want me to answer now. I mean, otherwise, happy to just go through the PR.
Yeah, sure. So we will go through it.
There's been a few comments already, and I've replied to some of them. I'll try to reply to all of them by the end of the week.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Thanks. So yeah, for other maintainers, please check this one out. And is there any other proposal someone would like to discuss? Seems like not. So let's move to the issue triage. And yeah, sorry. So the first issue here is about yeah, some Python clients. We discussed it already on the last community call. And yeah, I was asking for Kate if she got some answer from the cert manager community, but it seems that already by the different community user, it was proved that support for such thing is there in the cert manager. So Yeah, I think that we should keep it, and there is already some PR from the community user around the AKI stuff, but I think it was reviewed already by Jakub, and that he left some comment around, yeah, this one, around the backwards compatibility, I think. So how do we want to proceed with this issue? Should we just keep it and review the PR? Or do we want the discussion around this? Nobody? Anything? Okay, so I guess we should keep it and remove the needs triage. What do you think?
Guess Kate should take a look on the PR from the user and maybe put some comments and do some follow-up.
Hey, sorry, I have joined now. Sorry, I'm a bit late. Yeah, I can definitely take a look at the PR for this. So I think yeah, I'll have a look. The only caveat from the set manager side was the different issue was do things differently, but I don't think that's an issue that we need to worry about. But yeah, I can definitely have a look.
So I think
Okay.
one of the things in the PR which need to be decided is which certificates should be really updated with this value. Because I think the PR does it only for some of them, and it's not really clear what exactly the reason is for that. So
Yeah, so maybe we should just check the PR and then discuss it maybe next time when we have more information. Seems like yes. Okay. Let's move to another one, which was from a community user running Strimzi operator. It was 031 via OLM, I guess. And he was hitting some kind of limit, and we asked the user to check it with the latest version if it's happening as the same way, but he didn't get back for more than a month, so I think we can just close this one. And in case that there is still some issue, he can reopen it.
yeah, close it.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, another one is about making the interceptor classes configurable, and I guess there was another discussion around this, and you can configure this kind of configuration on the connector level, but the user wanted to have it on the connect level, if I remember correctly. And yeah, it was quite a long time since the user came back. Kate said that she's agree with Jakub, so I don't know, should we give more time for the user to respond if it's fine? But yeah, I guess we should maybe update the documentation as Kate mentions here. So yeah, sorry, Luke. Okay, nothing.
I mean, there's some value in setting it at the runtime level. For example, if you don't want to allow any connectors to override client configuration. So yeah, if you can't set it at the runtime level, then you're forced to allow connectors to have overrides. And the only built-in policy that lets you do that is the all policy. So basically, you allow connectors to override any client configuration. So in some cases, it can be a bit annoying, but yeah.
The reason why it's not configurable on the runtime level is that it's configurable through the Strimzi API. But it basically allows you to configure it only to whatever Strimzi supports right now.
Yeah, so you basically have a list of configuration you allow users to set, and did you just pick the smallest possible set? What was
No, the thing is more like in the custom resource, you have a tracing section where we configure tracing. And when you enable that, then Strimzi automatically sets the interceptors to
I see. Okay.
what match the tracing configuration, which means that, like, to avoid conflicts, that's why we not allow the users to set it, to kind of avoid having to make decisions if the user set it to this interceptor, but then in the Kafka CR, they said that they want to use this tracing and we need to set it to this different interceptor and so on. So it's not completely flexible for the user, but it kind of protects the Strimzi API that way. So that was kind of the motivation why it's blocked. Personally, I don't have problem if we want to have someone contribute that it's not blocked anymore and that it's handled in some different way. But I guess my take on this issue was that in this issue, it didn't really seem like what was needed here. But yeah, in general, I'm not against making it configurable somehow. But as part of it, we would need to kind of also figure out what should happen if there is some conflict in how it should be configured and so on.
Yeah, because I guess this also happens if you were to override that in your connector. What happens? Surely, that overrides whatever streams you set.
Yeah, so at that point, the user would have to handle the complication of them overwriting something that Strimzi set at the high level. I think it is beneficial for it to be clear, both in our docs, what we're setting, and then also, yeah, what they can override, but like a warning of like, if they want to override it, they should understand what Strimzi is setting. But yeah, my feeling was the same with Jakob of we could make it so that the user wants to configure it, but in terms of this specific issue that somebody's raised, it didn't sound like being able to set it at the connect level was actually the right answer for this person because they're wanting to set it for Debezium connectors. So to me, it makes sense that if you're setting a specific interceptor because you're running a Debezium connector, you would set that for each Debezium connector rather than at the top level.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, the only reason I brought this up is I think the last 4 CVs in Connect were caused by overrides. So there's about discussion whether overrides are enabled by default and whether should be disabled or more restrictive. So we know there are more people maybe less inclined to just use overrides.
Yeah. Well, and so this is obviously specifically about interceptor classes, because there are a whole bunch of the settings that we do allow to be set at the connect level. It's just specifically interceptor.classes is not one of them for the reasons that Jakob was saying. But yeah, I mean, if things change in future, we could always add this feature. But yeah, my feeling was it wasn't needed for this specific issue the user was describing.
It's also, I don't know about all the different other interceptors, but the tracing interceptors from Jaeger and from Open Tracing, it's historically not enough to just set the interceptor. You have to configure the tracing stack itself, where it should send the traces, how often, how many of the traces should be sent, and so on. So when configuring the tracing, Strimzi doesn't only set the interceptor classes, it also uses an agent which basically initializes the tracer so that it sends the traces. So like one other question here is that if you can freely configure the interceptor classes, like what would be the use cases where that alone is sufficient? Because for example, here when we talk about the tracing stuff, then yeah, I would expect that in many cases setting the interceptor is not sufficient and you will need something more, which you might not be set either.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, thanks for that. I mean, I tend to agree with you and Kate. I just wanted to bring some context around the connector overrides. Thanks.
Given that Debezium is a really popular tool, do you think it's worth us basically as an outcome from this updating the documentation to make sure it's clear how you would override the interceptors at the connector level, and we could give an example that is specifically for Debezium, but we could say like, as an example, if you were doing this, and then if there are other users, because I feel like Debezium is quite a popular open source project that's used.
I mean, don't they even have interceptors, their own interceptors as well? I think they ship some interceptors as well. So yeah, I would expect many Debezium users to be trying to set that thing.
That said, it's not really clear to me how it works. Like, does Debezium do the tracing initialization, or does it actually need to be? Does the Strimzi tracing need to be enabled, and then you need to set the Strimzi interceptor, the Debezium interceptor on the Debezium connector? Or like, if you want to document how to do this, then yeah, we probably need to also understand how the whole thing works. So someone will need to invest some time into it.
Yeah, my suspicion is the latter, but potentially, I mean, I'm happy to take this in terms of like reaching out to the Debezium team and see if they would be up for kind of helping us put something that would help, because it would help us from the point of view of not having future people asking for this specific enhancement, and then also would presumably help the Debezium team as well. So I'm happy to take this and go see if we can find the right people to put the right words together to make sure it works.
If we go for something specific in the documentation, does that mean it needs to be checked and tested every release?
I think if we can at least find out how it's intended to work, then we can make a judgment call of how much detail we put in the documentation. It might just be a case of saying, if you want to override something, for example, if you want to override the interceptor classes, make sure you understand what things Strimzi enables. And then, for example, when tracing is enabled, Strimzi adds. So like just adding a bit of information to the docs that we kind of know will be helpful to Debezium users, but we don't necessarily have to say, if you're running with Debezium, this is how you do it. I feel like we could do it in a way that helps the people that are asking this question without it being a step-by-step that we then have to verify every time.
Right, yeah, okay.
Okay, so let's put it as an update to the documentation, mentioning this, let's say, how to configure or override these kind of configuration. Sounds good?
Yeah, sounds good.
So do you want Kate to be tagged here in order to reach out to the Bezium, or I can
Yeah,
just leave it as it is and you will pick this up?
you can tag me to say, yeah, it's gonna see how we could do this in a way that's useful. And yeah, chat to the division.
Okay, so something like this.
Yeah, sounds good.
Perfect. And should I add a documentation label, maybe? Let's see. Okay. Thanks.
Maybe you can also rename the issue.
Yeah, good point.
Or like add some doc prefix to the beginning or something.
Like this. Or maybe I should remove the enhancement, right?
Well, it is in a way a doc enhancement, so
Okay, let's leave it as it is. Thanks. Okay, the next one is about, yeah, it was discussed last time as well, and it's about adding some default pod disruption budget for the components like Kafka exporter and entity operator, if I remember correctly. And it was because the community user had some issues with the, yeah, it was the audition tools. So yeah, should we somehow add these defaults, or what if Kate or Jakub remembers the conclusion here?
so I would not jump into implementation, but yeah, the motivation is a bit silly, but it's not unreasonable, and I think it's not completely unique. So I will keep the issue and see if either the guy who opened it or someone else wants to contribute it. It might be possibly, if he doesn't want to contribute it, it might be possibly also an interesting good start issue. It's like, I don't think this change does anything really useful other than silencing some validation tools and so on. But I think the impact on kind of the maintenance long term should be pretty small as well. So I don't see it as a major issue to have this.
Yeah, whenever I mentioned that having it configured in that way, it will be actually the same as today, right? Okay, so yeah, let's keep it open and have the good start. If the user will say that he doesn't want to contribute, I will add the help wanted tag. Let's see. Cool, thanks. And another one is about infinite loop reconciled to range annotation on ingress resources. I guess that there was an issue with the annotations that something on rancher is adding to the ingresses, right? And yeah, we asked user last month if the suggestion from Jakub was fine from his side. So yeah, I think he already worked around it here. So I think we can close it.
The workaround is pretty nasty
Okay.
because it's not something you can easily copy. You basically need to customize it yourself. You need to know the IP addresses and so on. So I think this would deserve a PR to address it. I think Rancher is sufficiently popular Kubernetes distro, and we did this workaround, I think, for some PVC stuff or for some services stuff as well. So I would keep this.
Okay. Is it somehow related to the server-side apply as well? In some way?
Well, it is and it isn't. So server-side
Okay.
apply would obviously be something what would address this in a different direction. But also implementing server-side apply is way more complicated. So the simple fix for this is what we have already for the other resources, having some annotation ignore list where we don't necessarily override some specific annotations. So like that should be, I don't remember how exactly the code looks like, but that should not take days to implement like the server-side apply would.
Yeah. I will just update the comment pointing to the direction of the ignore list as we have for the other annotations as well. Okay, so I think we can add the help wanted there. And is it a good start?
I might have a look at it. I think it would be good to have this fixed because it's basically a bug.
Okay. So should I remove the help wanted if you will have a look at it?
Yeah, feel free to keep it there, but I
Okay.
don't think anyone will jump in.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Okay, another one is about the Connect build and its structure of the plugins. And I guess there was another discussion, and Mikael also created Jira in the Kafka Jira project. And it seems that our structure is correct in some way, but the documentation is not that straightforward as it seems.
Yeah, I feel like I'm happy for us to close this issue, and then if the Kafka upstream decides actually they're going in a completely different direction, then we can raise a new issue at that point. From our initial discussion, I feel like I'm content that I kind of understand how our stuff works compared to how the documentation is written, but I do think the documentation in Kafka upstream could be clearer.
I mean, it's been a couple of weeks already, so but I think so There's been a bit of discussion in the Kafka Jira, and I think the exact behavior is a bit nuanced, and there's a few things I wasn't quite understanding perfectly myself. So I think having one less nested folder would be better, if I remember correctly what I read in the thread 2 weeks ago. It's probably worth reading rereading and maybe further poking Greg. I mean, Greg is a Connect expert in Apache Kafka. If I got a question, it's the person I go to. And I think that there's some slight differences whether there's one or two nested levels. So I think the last sentence on the comment your mouse wasn't to rephrase it a different way. Plugin path is a list of levels 0 directories. Level 1 directories are isolated from one another. Level 2 and deeper directory are completely relevant to Jar package plugin, no matter for class hierarchies.
Yeah, I did have a little look through the discussion on the upstream. I think when some of this, I can't remember if I read all the comments, but my understanding is that because we have each of them is basically in their own level 1 directory, they're therefore isolated from each other. And although it's maybe a bit strange that we have so many levels down, I think it makes sense when you look at how we build our images. So if you're just looking at it from, if I was like handcrafting something, then maybe you wouldn't do it that way. But I think given the way that we're generating them, I think it makes sense. And I feel happy that I understand why it works. So from that point of view, that's why I'm happy for us to close the issue.
Yeah, so to be honest, what Greg describes here, that's exactly how I thought it worked before. So that's what we designed for. And one thing to keep in mind is that it's not what we deal with in the when automatically adding the plugins. It's not just the issue of the hierarchy. We also want to make sure that when we are, for example, adding the different artifacts in the connect build part, especially, that we don't, for example, override some duplicate files and duplicate directories and so on, right? So that's where the deep hierarchy structure helps, because it helps to, for example, avoid overriding the files from one artifact with the same named file from another artifact and so on. So that's why we have chosen that.
I think as long as we don't put multiple plugins in the same level 1 directory, it could be nested, which should be fine. But if they are in the same level 1 directory, yeah, then they are in their class path is mixed basically. So they could load each other classes if they are the same, but different versions.
So we don't do some super deep level validation, right? So strictly speaking, what Strimzi adds, it's something called artifacts, which are either just some archives or some specific files, or it might be Maven coordinates. But we don't really do any validation of how many of them implement. Like, we don't parse every jar there to see how many classes they are implementing some connector and so on. So it's not like we are somehow ensuring that this does not happen. If the user is stupid enough to create the custom resource in a way that they add multiple different connectors to a single plugin structure, then Strimzi will basically mix them up altogether, right? Because we don't do any deep validation. But if the user use it as they are supposed to use, then yeah, the different plugins should not mix with each other.
The check that I did that made me go, okay, I'm pretty happy with this setup is because when you initially look at the structure, my assumption was that you would end up with, say I'm using the file stream connector and I want to use it with 2 different versions. My assumption was that I might end up in a position where I have one directory called file stream and then have 2 subdirectories that are the separate kind of images for those 2 versions. But actually, in reality, when you're configuring your Kafka connector resources, or your connect build resource, the Strimzi API prevents you from naming things the same. If you try and create things with the same name, but they've just got different versions or something, Strimzi actually complains at you. So I think from the testing that I did, I feel both confident that I understand why it works now compared to my previous understanding of how the loading should work. And I couldn't find any scenario where I felt we would get in a mess. Obviously there's the whole like what is in the actual classes and the clashing that's a kind of separate problem. But in terms of the user adding a bunch of artifacts into their connect build, from the testing that I did, I felt confident that we're in a good place and that the users won't get messed up. So yeah, as I say, from my point of view, I'm happy for us to close this issue.
So like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. And I didn't close it. Okay. So another one is about adding a possibility to enable features such as shared consumers in Kafka, because there is a Kafka features script in Kafka which enables these kind of features. And yeah, the issue is about if we should implement a way how to enable it in the Kafka CR. And yeah, I guess that Kate, Paolo, and Jakub already agreed on having this, but that it requires a proposal.
So funny enough, when I opened this, it was because of some talk at the current conference. I don't know if it was the talk from Andrew about the queues, where this was specifically mentioned that it needs to be enabled this way, but at least in Kafka 4.0, you can actually enable the queues per regular configuration options. You don't need to do anything with the features. So, and I think Tina can confirm it because her blog post says exactly the same. So I was actually wondering if this is some change coming in 4.1 or if, because that got me a bit confused what the plan for the Kafka features actually is.
Yeah, I will need to go and check what we need to do with Kafka features because I was testing it only on 4.0, which is in an early release. So I had to turn on the unstable API, enable unstable API config. So I didn't use Kafka features But I'll have to go and test what we need to do with the Kafka features with 4.1, and when it becomes production ready, would we still need to turn this on? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think like maybe we can leave it for the proposal, because anyway this needs a proposal first. But I think it would be good to understand how exactly Kafka plans to use this or not use this. In general, not just related to the queues.
Yeah, but there's some work in progress in this area too. So, for example, like currently we don't even have a way to see what features a broker supports. So this makes it kind of hard to manage, like what happens if some of my brokers don't support this feature and I try to set it. So yeah, it's still things are still a bit changing, and I expect feature to be more used in the future, to become like a proper way to to enable things, or I mean basically to do what it says, not just to enable features or not. But yeah, currently it's so it has replaced the old metadata flag, this has covered this use case, and it's being used for more like the queues, and it's gonna be used for the eligible replicas as well. But yeah, there's still some missing bits, like just describing what features are supported, and so I'm not sure we can do very much right now, but yeah, it's probably something you need to keep an eye on.
Mikael, do you by any chance know out of your head whether a Kafka feature tool can be called against brokers or whether it has to be called against controllers?
I believe both.
Because if it can be called against brokers, then yeah, I guess we have the luxury to say that we leave it to the users so far and address it when it's better understood how Kafka plans to use this. If it would work only against the controllers, it would basically mean that the users have pretty much no way how to use it manually because we don't expose the controllers. So like that would kind of make a difference in how urgently we need to tackle this, I guess.
Yeah, it works for both broker side and controller side.
Yeah, just check. There's a dash bootstrap server, dash bootstrap controllers flags. So
Okay, that's great, because then, yeah, at least it means that there's a manual workaround.
Yeah.
For now. Thanks.
Okay, so something like this, or should I mention also that there is a manual workaround for now?
Well,
Okay.
it's the Kafka feature script, which is the manual workaround, so it's
Yeah,
already
well,
mentioned, I guess.
Okay. Good. Thanks. Okay, another one is a system test task or issue, let's say, but yeah, that's for the image volume support. But as it's mentioned in the issue, it's currently blocked by the image volume support into Kubernetes, right? As we are supporting older versions where this feature is not there. So yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think the system test for this is critical, because it's basically we just create the YAML and the rest is up to Kubernetes and the container engine. So it's not like Strimzi does there something special, but yeah, Paolo wanted to have this open, so I opened it.
Okay. Okay, another one is for the documentation. And I guess there was some kind of confusion from when the community users specified a different type of the console layout type. And yeah, it was failing because of the pattern, which is not, I guess, configurable option for the JSON layout type. And I guess, yeah, there was a discussion around that. It was also closed, but then it was reopened as we should mention in the documentation clearly what you can specify in the inline logging and then in the external logging part. So yeah, I guess we should keep this one.
You can assign it to me, Lukasz, if you like, but I don't know whether we want any doc good starts or you can do both.
Yeah, we can still tag it good start, and then if somebody else.
Yeah, like we can definitely take it, but I think historically we had doc and test issues as a good start, and nobody ever
Yeah,
picked them.
let's be real. You can add me
So-
as well if you like.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm definitely in for adding the good start, but if you think it's a good start, but I don't think you should have high hopes.
But I think we shouldn't assign it to somebody until they're ready to work it. So Paul, if you're going to work it,
Okay,
right,
yeah, sure.
let's assign it. But if you're not going to do it for a couple of weeks, then let's see, because there's always a first time for everything.
Yeah.
Also slightly related, so maybe as we are now adding some additional library for the JSON logging, maybe that can be used as an kind of example how to differentiate the different logging types, because yeah, that's pretty much the context of where this issue originates, and that's one of the questions which comes up pretty often, like how do I configure JSON logging? So maybe it can be kind of joined together.
And then the PR, let's just say. I will add the PR there after the call. So yeah, something like this.
Yeah, sounds good.
Should I remove the bug because it's not really a bug in the code?
Well, bugs can be in a documentation as
Yeah.
well. So I
Okay.
don't think it has to be code, whether it is or isn't a bug. That's a different discussion, I guess.
Okay, so leaving it as it is. Thank you. Another one is about the Mirror Maker 2, and yeah, there was an issue with some rejoining with the same ID during, I guess it was during some rolling updates or something. And it seems that Kate already assigned it to
Yeah, so this
herself.
was an issue that I asked somebody to raise based on a discussion at Current. So basically the people in question had seen a bunch of issues with Mirror Maker and I guess Connect more generally, but they were specifically doing with Mirror Maker and specifically around connectors stopping, things going wrong, rebalancing. So yeah, I'm going to take a look at this. I think one of the main outcomes is just to make sure I'm going to kind of review the docs and make sure that it's very clear what people should be expecting in terms of how the rebalancing works and things like that. And I said I'd kind of just give it another overview and just make sure I don't see anything obvious that could be the problem, and then we'll kind of go from there. I think it's too long ago for us to actually likely diagnose what the problem was, but at least we can make sure that it's clear in our documentation how the rebalancing should work and what behavior people should be seeing. And then, as I say, I said to them, I would just kind of check it and make sure that in my own head, I'm happy that there isn't any edge cases we've missed. But yeah, so I asked them to raise this issue as a result of the chat that I had with them at Current.
Okay, and thanks for volunteering.
Welcome. And then this next one was also the same person, so it was again related. So the specific problem that he was describing here was that so the particular company, they've actually stopped using Mirror Maker because they found it that they weren't that keen on how it worked, or that they struggled with it. So they had all these other problems that they couldn't diagnose, but then separately, they were just a bit confused about how to configure it. They said they found that very hard. And it sounds like it's been improved since they were using it, because I think they stopped using Mirror Maker a few years ago now. But again, it sounds like there's maybe a few places that we could improve, so maybe giving a bit more examples. And I also noticed there's like a whole section, if you look at the Connect documentation that we have, we show like an example YAML snippet, and that's like there's like 41 lines next to or something. I don't know if I link where it is, but there's like a section that's got 41 different footnotes for like one file, which I feel like is quite confusing. Because you can't really see the bottom, you can't see the file while looking at all the footnotes. So I feel like we could improve here. But yeah, I don't know if I linked where.
Yeah, it was from the community user link, so I think we can add the link there after the call, possibly.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find where I found the YAML that seemed to have 41 footnotes.
It's chapter 11.9.
No, thanks. Oh yeah, so it's when you're configuring Mirror Maker specifically. Yeah, I just feel like maybe we could give like a shorter high-level overview of the Mirror Maker YAML and then maybe expand on the specific subsections or something, because it's really hard to reference back. Maybe we can even take some inspiration from a book that was written.
And it's actually 43.
Is it?
Okay, so
Sorry,
yeah,
if we do this kind of split with that one, just for consistency, is that something we want to do with the other? Because what the initial aim with these was to have a single configuration example for each of the components. So if we're going to start breaking this one up for consistency, is that something we'd want to do with the others?
I don't think any of the other ones have quite that many footnotes, do they?
Ooh, I bet the Kafka does it? Let's have a look.
Oh
no, it's only got 26. Maybe, yeah, maybe Mirror Maker's a special case.
I mean, 26 is still quite a lot. So I feel like my feeling is if it's really hard for you to look at the footnote and then see which line you're like, if you're going to have to open the documents on 2 different pages, is it that helpful? And could we do it in a better way? Is the questions I would pose.
Yeah, but maybe some people prefer just to see a full worked example as well.
To be honest, while I'm not strictly against splitting it, I don't really have a strong opinion on that. I'm not convinced that this is the cause of the issues with Mirror Maker. For me, it's more that the configuration is really a bit messy by design because, yeah, like who really knows where to set the different options which you need to set? Is it set in one cluster, the other cluster, in one of the connectors? So, like, I'm not sure having this file too long is really the problem here, to be honest.
I think for me, where it gets confusing is if you try and read the Mirror Maker section beginning to end to understand how to configure it. Like you say, there's a lot of different elements to it, of like configuring the different pieces. And we have a minimal configuration for Mirror Maker, but we don't explain any of what you're setting for the minimal one. And then there's a section that says handling high volumes of messages.
I think that's a bit confusing because I don't think the example we are talking about relates specifically to the handling of high volume of messages.
Well, no, exactly. I'm not sure why then the example is under the handling of high volume of messages. And then the example literally shows everything, including like the templating for the pods. So like if I was doing Mirror Maker stuff for a lot of the cases, I probably wouldn't use anything beyond 34 in terms of the footnote.
Yeah, but do you think that just by having it split into multiple smaller examples, you would actually know where to configure task shutdown, graceful timeout, milliseconds?
Well,
I don't think so. Like, as I said, I don't have problem with splitting it, but I don't think that really solves the problem.
Well, so yeah, in the description, I didn't say specifically that I think we should split it down, but we already have a short, like a minimal configuration example. So maybe if we put footnotes for that one so that it's clear what those sections are. And then I feel like we just need to have a little look at this whole section. And like you say, it's confusing that the example's under the high volumes, like maybe
I think that's just a stylistic issue there. That's meant to be a kind of a note rather than a heading.
Yeah. And then like I think there's the sections, this is where it's hard to find. So like we say, I think it's footnote 11, we say Kafka Connect configuration, standard Apache Kafka configuration may be provided, restricted to those properties not managed directly by Strimzi. We have that line, and then somewhere else we probably have a line about some other configuration, but maybe we need like a paragraph or something that kind of gives a hint in the right direction of like, because to someone who's never used Mirror Maker and doesn't understand how Connect works, Kafka Connect configuration, standard Apache Kafka configuration may be provided isn't enough information for them to understand what to do. And I know that obviously we're built on top of Kafka, so we kind of expect people to understand Kafka, but I just feel like this is such a complicated topic in terms of its Mirror Maker that's running on Connect, but then it's the Strimzi version of Mirror Maker. I just feel like it's worth us having a look at this section and seeing, are there any tweaks we can make just to make it a little bit clearer for users? my feeling when I went and had a look at the sections was that I can understand how they might feel confused and overwhelmed reading this.
I guess it's
think part of that is
time
the-
for a refresh. If you want to assign it to me, I can take a look at it and see if there's a better way of presenting this material.
And I think part of it is the topic is very complicated, and so that makes it hard. But it's, yeah, if we can make any minor improvements with fresh eyes, then I feel like it's useful.
Yeah, I mean that this example is not really good. I mean, that's actually the file doesn't really make sense. You're configuring source, heartbeat, and checkpoint together in the same direction, which doesn't make sense. I mean, the heartbeat should be the other way around if you want this to work in a one-way mirroring scenario. So yeah, I would completely remove the heartbeat section here.
Well, that might be a first step, just having a look at the technical
That
details.
saves you 6, 7, 8 lines. But yeah, I mean, it makes no sense here. If you run this, it doesn't do what you think it does.
To be honest, and that's probably a separate issue, I guess, but we don't allow really configure the heartbeat connector in any other way.
Sorry, Jakob, I'm not quite sure I understand what you've said.
This is the only way how you can configure the heartbeat connector.
The point that Mikkel is making is that if you were going to set up a scenario where you wanted to run the checkpoint, source, and heartbeat connectors with Strimzi today, I think what you would want to do is have two separate Mirror Maker custom resources, one with source and checkpoint, and then a different one with heartbeat, so that you could set the source and target clusters correctly. Because if I was going to run this without Strimzi, I would run two separate connect clusters, and I would run two of the source and checkpoint on one of them, and then I'd run heartbeat on the other. That's how it should work.
Yeah, because source and checkpoint write to the target cluster, while heartbeat has to write to the source cluster. Here's the way you've configured it. Heartbeat writes to the target cluster, which is useless because what you want is to write heartbeats to the source, have these heartbeats mirrored by source connector, so then you can read you can read them in the target and basically get some latency metrics and stuff like that, or just know if they make it to the target cluster or not.
I'm not sure it's configured that way.
Well, here it's not what's going to happen. Here's going to write to the target cluster.
I think you might get the impression. I can see why you might get that impression from the source and target clusters, but I'm not sure it's the case. And also I'm wondering, like, is it redesigned in Kafka the way that you run a separate mirror maker just for the heartbeat connector? That seems pretty wasteful.
So yeah, that I fully agree. But we typically are only, I mean, a heartbeat is not, you don't have to run it. I mean, it does, I mean, I think it's only useful in some, yeah, very specific scenarios. So I think in most cases, you probably don't want to run it. I mean, if you're running bidirectional replication, then you already have two runtimes, so then, it's easy to run it. If you run it in a single way mirroring, my recommendation is to not rely on it. I mean, you can cheat and configure, with client overrides, you can make it write to the source cluster if you want to. But if you want to, but in most cases, I would just recommend you to not run it. I mean, the value it provides is kind of limited. I guess the only real value this provides is if you have intermittent traffic. So if you don't have traffic I mean, you only have traffic from, I don't know, 2 p.m. till 6 p.m. and the rest of the time you don't have any traffic, Heartbeat can ensure you that, you pump some messages throughout all the time and you can ensure that things are still connected. But for most cases, people have traffic throughout the day, and you would see it immediately if Mirror Maker gets disconnected or if there's like a network issue. So yeah, I mean, otherwise, yeah, if you have to run another runtime just for that, it's super wasteful. But yeah, this is what you have to do. Basically, if you run Mirror Maker through standalone and distributed, you have to do this yourself, bring this over runtime. If you run in dedicated mode, it does it for you. It starts two runtime within the same Java process and run Heartbeat the other way around.
Okay.
But only in dedicated mode, and which is not what we're using.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for the discussion. And yeah, we are out of time. So is there any other business before closing the call?
Should we plan some dedicated call to clean up the triage backlog?
Yeah, I wanted to mention as well. But, yeah.
Last one from me for that.
Yeah. So I think we can schedule something after the call and yeah, mention it on the Slack channel or something.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you, bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.